And next I have Die Again, Tess Gerritsen's Die Again. Tess Gerritsen's Rizzoli and Owl mystery series. This is debatable whether this is the 12th book or the 11th, because there was one book that was featuring some of the characters and for some reason they don't count it as one of the books in the series. Girl, I've just confused the hell out of myself. Let me shut up. Always Tess Gerritsen books involved an A story and a B story, or an A narrative and a B narrative, but the A narrative is usually the one in which Rizzoli and Owls, the series regulars and the series protagonists, in which they do the investigation. And what happens in the A story, to set off the B story, is that they find a taxidermist slash big game hunter hanging upside down in his garage, gutted like a damn catfish. I was just like, what? Okay. And then, as far as the B story follows the first person narrative of a woman named Millie. Now, Millie went on she's from London. She went on a safari trip with her fiance, and it included, you know, a couple of more individuals or tourists on that safari trip. Unbeknownst to them, there is a killer in their midst, and he decides to pluck them off one by one, night after night, until there's no damn body else left in that camp. However, Millie survives by breaking free and running off into the African bush. She ends up surviving. She makes it to a gaming lodge, where she is resurrected from her muddy grave. So in a sense, she dies again. But those two stories, as always in Tess Gerritsen books, they kind of come together and they combine and they fuel the whole sort of structure of the novel. It's really not hard to explain, but it's so much more sensible when you actually read how the two pieces come together. Tess Gerritsen always features stories revolving around women who come out of horrific situations, and that is very, very present here as we go through Botswana and on forward through Millie's progression. But what I have to say is that while she does do that, and she does a good job at that, she don't be doing the villains no good. Like, I'm sorry, like, I did not get the villain in this book. I just thought he was just so wooden and just nothing. Like, even if you sit here and give the reader his history or his story, is not so much interesting if he can commit these gruesome crimes, but you're not letting us actually experience how he became who he was. And then at the end of the book, which I will not give away, you left us no choice but to accept the fact that this is what you gave us as in regards to villain. Because a mystery book is not, it's only as strong as the actual villain. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have, the villain has to have a presence as well. Honey, you got to give your villain some life too. You got to. I was not feeling your villain. Like, go back. You have to go back. Hun, no, you gotta go back. You gotta write this again. No, but I'm really joking. It really was a good book. I love Rizzoli and Owl mystery series, and if you have not caught up with this series, I do suggest you read it. If you want something that's sort of a blend of medical thrillers with police procedural, along with some thrilling out this wall murder cases, and Tess Gerritsen is pretty good at that. Plus, she's just smart. She used to be a doctor, but she's still a doctor. You can't be used to be nothing. Next, I read The Surrendered by Chang-Rae Lee, and this book, let me tell you something. If you read this book, do not go to Kmart and buy yourself a pack of razor blades. So anyway, as you may or may not know, Chang-Rae Lee is a Korean American writer. His family immigrated to America when he was about 3 years old. But anyway, that had nothing to do with nothing. But what I'm trying to say is that his first breakout novel was a book called Native Speaker. And I read Native Speaker for an ethnic American literature class a couple of years ago, and I did not like that book. I'm sorry, I did not. I was just not feeling the book, because it was basically about a Korean man and his stoicisms and his hard shell of a demeanor and his walls that he built up around his family. And it's just like, even though that was the point of that book, to show what a Korean or an immigrant would feel in the face of, you know, being in a whole different culture where people were most likely not to try to even understand him or feel what he's trying to put down, which is not much of anything. That whole intensity, literally, to me, it fused that whole book. And for me, it's just like chipping at a wall, and I just couldn't get through to that book. But I understood what Ray was doing, not Ray, but what Lee was doing. But at the same time, I was just like, you know what, I don't like your protagonist. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't like him. But however, with The Surrendered, I really did enjoy this book, despite the fact that, like I said, you may want to get a pack of razor blades and some gauze, say, if you want to survive. It was a very bleak and sorrowful and suffering story. But it was good at the same time. Like, I was really, really, really feeling this book. The Surrender is basically a post-war novel. That it was the Korean War, you know, where the North Korea decided to ask China to help them fuel their communist beliefs onto South Korea. And South Korea hired the Americans and the US to fight the North Koreans, and they just did their whole battle. And you know, it's still going on now, basically. The Surrender features three different protagonists telling this whole big, I mean, it's a huge interlocking story that takes place between different times and different parts of the world. So there's sometimes they're in Korea, sometimes they're flash forwarding into America, sometimes China, sometimes they're in the 1940s, and the latest they ever been is in the late 80s. That really is how the book is structured and constructed. It's not so linear that each of these character stories is given to you chronologically. You have to really hold on to each of the clues that Lee gives down before you move forward with each preceding chapter. And I hope that makes sense, but you know, I just confused my own damn self. Like I was saying, the book features three different protagonists. The first one is a young Korean girl named June. June and her family are North Korean. And what happens is that they're trying to flee, you know, it's the war. They're trying to get their asses out of North Korea and get to South Korea. Because, you know, hell, they don't want these folks bombing their asses and stuff over nothing. But some really what I feel like is just ideas. But what happens is that as they try to flee, she ends up losing all of her family. Her father is executed pretty much on point. Her brother is taken by the North Korean army, or the Chinese really, and her family, as they try to flee and go south, they're basically picked apart along the way until there's only just her, and she's by herself. She's just an orphan all along on these dusty ass roads, eating field beans and mud, basically. That ain't really it, but that's it. She runs across a American military guy. His name is Hector. Hector was discharged from the military in Korea because his attitude is just ratchet. Like, he was cussing out his superiors and punching them in the faces and all kinds of crazy stuff. So on this lonely, dusty road, the two come together, and basically Hector takes June to an orphanage. And in that orphanage, that's when they meet the third protagonist, which is a missionary wife and daughter named Sylvie. And Sylvie, girl, Sylvie just got all kinds of stuff going on with her past. Like, all of these characters in this book are effed up. Like, everybody is effed up, like psychologically, and some of them, girl, some of them got some mutilations on their body. But the point is that these three characters, their stories all tie up together into this one bleak, dark, sorrowful journey. And it's really good to watch what happens either way. I think that in some parts, Lee did cheat a little bit in this book. And what I mean by cheating is that I think that when you try to make a book that is dark, or so to speak, every little nugget, every little character does not have to have an ill fate. I don't like that. There is no shining light or no silver lining in this book, so to speak, for these characters' fate. Like, it's just not. But it trickles down to all the secondary characters, and I was just like, look, can you just let us breathe a little bit? Like, is there ever going to be a happy moment for these characters? So The Surrender is probably, when I look back at the books that I read this month, I really say that Surrender was probably the one that I was most invested in reading experience wise, and in the book that I got the most out of. So definitely The Surrendered. And last I read was Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress. It's one of those, to me, it's one of those ethereal Chinese coming of age stories that combines political China, you know, politics, culture, and love, and all of this peer group stuff all into one ball. But ultimately, what it's about is these two Chinese teenagers. They end up being, you know, relocated into the mountainous areas of China because, you know, during the Cultural Revolution, Mao didn't want his people to know or read about anything pertaining to Western or other foreign ideas. Like, it was strictly on China, and even in that case, they wanted to limit some of that. And these two boys, their parents were like prolific figures within their community. So in order to sort of sever the line of that, you know, that status, you have to kill them all from the root. So he takes these boys as far as their rules and their politics and shifts them off into the mountainous areas where they have to be sort of reconformed, or you know, into believing in all the rules of Mao. But anyway, what ends up happening is that these two boys, they end up visiting a neighboring village where there's another boy who's actually in the same situation that they are. This kid, his family is known for being journalists, so he has like a stack of books inside of a suitcase. The two boys, they decide to snatch this damn suitcase to take all of his damn books, which is wrong. And then they take these stories that they're reading and they share them with another girl in another village. This girl is what the title says, the little Chinese seamstress. So she was born inside of this mountainous area where there's no education. But what ends up happening is that the two boys, this influence decides to put a change inside of her, so that she is actually slowly shifting herself away from being that little ignorant mountain girl and decides, you know what, look, she was feeling herself after reading those books, after hearing those stories, and she was like, you know what, I'm done being a seamstress, I'm about to take my ass to the city and I'm gonna go be a woman. And she packed her stuff up and she left these two dudes like up in the mountain. So I really didn't know exactly what the point of this book was going to be until I got into the very end, and I was just like, you know what, you go girl, if you're going to do it that way, you better go ahead, because I wouldn't want to live in no mountains either. Picking up rice and being taxed and giving all my tax dollars to Russians and making them build. Okay, yeah, we're going too far. But anyway, guys, that was all that I read in the month of January. But I think I'm done here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I try my best to be as eloquent as possible, but it's just not possible with me. Like, I can't do it. So I gotta go. I appreciate it, guys. Bye.